Welcome to the Shootin' Show. Stand by for shots fired.
Hello, I'm Johnny Rowland, your host of the Shootin' Show, and welcome to today's program. We have a real pretty day out here on the range. It is in fact windy, and we are fighting the wind a little bit, but it's still a nice day to be out shooting. Well, friends, we have a great show for you today. We have some footage that we took this past week in our own state capitol when we were down fighting gun legislation. I think you're really going to enjoy it. We also have a wonderful presentation by Dr. Susanna Grazia. She's from Killeen, Texas, and I won't sum up what she's going to say. She'll do it very well for herself, but trust me on this one, her testimony was riveting. One of the things that we noticed down there, a legislator from one of the inner city areas wanted to license the purchase of handgun or ammunition in general, whether it be for rifle or handgun, whatever else. And the thing that she exempted was shotgun shells, because she didn't see shotgun shells as being particularly dangerous. And that just goes to show, friends, that some of these people really don't have a clue of what they're talking about, because a shotgun shell is by far the most devastating of any shoulder or handheld ammunition that money can buy, as far as what we're talking about here. Well, speaking of that, let's open our program with this great Remington 870. And again, I think you're really going to enjoy the program today. The judge is back, and he's going to have some commentary that all of you will want to hear. So let's get another shooting show underway. Now, friends, what we have here are a couple of 50 caliber Thompson Center black powder rifles. And you can tell that one of them is what we're used to seeing. This in my left hand here is a Hawken copy, which was a very popular gun during the frontier days, certainly before repeating rifles or before the self-contained cartridge became popular. And this is sort of a new departure, and yes, it is windy out here, but this is called the Thompson Center. This is a Scout carbine. Now you'll notice the barrel is several inches shorter. In fact, it's about 6 inches or so shorter, it looks like, than the full-size Hawken rifle. But this is the most interesting gun because what it's mostly reminiscent of is a 94 Winchester. It even has the barrel band down here on the stock. And it sort of feels like a lever-action 94, which most of us are so familiar with. Now, you still have the tremendous power capability, and we don't have time today, but we're getting more requests to do pieces on black powder. So what we're going to do on a future program, maybe as early as next week, will be to chronograph these two guns in comparison and see how much difference there is in barrel length, because both of them will take the similar charge, roughly 90 to 100 or so grains of double F powder. And believe me, friends, your velocity is not that terribly great. It's going to run in the 13, 14, 1500 feet per second velocity with a lot of loads, a lot of more powerful loads, but you have this huge bullet. One, you have a half-inch bullet that weighs anywhere up to and including 400 or so grains, sometimes more than that, depending on your manufacturer. Thompson Center makes a real nice bullet, 370 grains, and you have a tremendous amount of muzzle energy. You have a lot of knockdown, which really makes the performance of these guns very spectacular within their useful range. Now, we're generally talking 100, 150 yard gun here on most of these black powder guns, and most people are going to want to shoot them with the open sights. And it comes with a buckhorn type sight that we're used to seeing on such as the 94 Winchester. And it's about, again, the same size package. It does have a heavy barrel. It has this brass recoil. You wouldn't call it a pad, you'd call it a piece on the butt there, the butt plate. And from the bench now, it's not too terrible much fun. Now, offhand, you don't really notice it, but you certainly would, shooting from bench rest, you'd want to use some sort of foam or cushion, at least I would, because I just don't like to get beaten up on the bench rest. But this is a centerfire gun. On our standard Hawken copy, yeah, we lost our net there. On a standard Hawken, your ignition is on the side, in this case on the top here. And of course this gun has a set trigger, but on this Thompson Center Scout, you have one trigger, which is considerably heavier, but the ignition here, and let's see if we can get in and take a look at this. Ignition is in a straight line rather than being cocked up on one side or the other. It's in a straight line. Now this may ensure maybe a slightly faster ignition. But one other thing that really makes these guns different, and I believe this is a patented feature, I think so, you have some little holes drilled on back at the end of the breech here, and what they do, they're actually gas holes that go into the chamber. And this is supposed to do something like equalize the pressure. It's supposed to make your shot-to-shot consistency better. And honestly, we haven't worked with it enough, but the gases are angled away from the shooter. Now then, we never, personally, I never am going to shoot any black powder gun, anything like this, because you have this percussion cap on the nipple here. I'm never going to shoot without eye protection. There's just no point in it. Even in the field, when I'm shooting a black powder gun, I prefer some sort of eye protection, because there's just no use, there's no need in taking any sort of chance with your vision. It's just not necessary at all. But this is a most interesting gun, and another gun that came in with this is the Scout pistol, which is a single shot pistol, looks a lot like this gun, and supposedly is one of the most powerful handguns, period, because it'll take a tremendous load of black powder in that pistol. So we'll be looking at it on another day. But this is a somewhat of a unique departure. We're seeing some different types of black powder guns now, especially with this inline ignition, but to tell you the truth, this makes a lot of sense, because it's very much like the 94 Winchester that we're used to, or so many of us are anyway, which is your premier deer rifle in a lot of different areas. So here you have a gun that is powerful enough. Honestly, a 50 caliber projectile is probably powerful enough to take anything on the North American continent, to tell you the truth. Now then, on one of the big bears in Alaska, I'm sure that the big bears have been taken with guns like this. However, personally, I don't think I'd want to go out with any single shot against a large brown bear. I believe I'd want someone backing me up with an elephant rifle. But they certainly are quite a bit more powerful than a lot of us would think offhand. Now friends, let me tell you about something. When we're out shooting black powder, you know that it's messy. You see, I've got these paper towels with me here. You can't help it, it's going to be messy. And black powder, when it's fired, the residue is extremely corrosive. And this is something that we can't stress enough. When you're shooting real black powder, even power decks, you darn sure want to get in and you want to clean your gun as quickly as you can after shooting. If you want to preserve your gun, and most of us do, we want these things to be good for many years to come, you have got to clean off that black powder residue. And maybe we can get out of here before the wind blows everything away. All right, now this is really important, because in the past, I personally enjoyed shooting black powder, but I'd go out and shoot the gun for 30 minutes, and I'd go in and clean it for an hour and a half. I just don't enjoy cleaning that much. A lot of us don't. I mean, the instructions used to say, well, take your barrel out, put it in a tub of hot water in your bathtub, and have hot soapy water, and then you put this deal over the nipple and you suck the hot water through it, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's just more than most of us are going to want to do. Now then, the good news is our friends down at RB17 in Spring, Texas, have the RB17 cleaner, which literally, to me, this is a revolution in cleaning black powder, because you can run a patch with RB17 down your bore, run it through the action there, and it literally, it just cleans it just right away. When I used to spend an hour, hour and a half cleaning one of these things, now I can do it in about 5 minutes. And I just think that is a huge improvement, because one, black powder really is fun to shoot. Personally, I like the way it goes boom, I like the smoke, I like the smell, like a lot of us do that are into this stuff. And RB17 is really will. Now this will help you. Now, this is no joke. This is, in fact, not even a paid commercial. They're good friends of ours. But this stuff is so neat. This is something new they have called a quick action spray. And they have an 800 number, and I'll see if I can find it. We'll give it to you. But anyway, this just makes all the difference in the world. Now, these are great for cleaning regular firearms, but the quick action spray you can get in the small areas around the nipple and all, and it literally, it just cleans this black powder like nothing I've ever seen. And this is, like I said, this is something that will help you. If you like shooting anything, of course, it needs to be cleaned, but the black powder stuff is critical. You know, I don't clean this Colt 45 every time I go out and shoot it. When it gets dirty or dirty enough, I will clean it. And yes, RB17 is the best cleaner I've found. But the black powder stuff, yeah, it's got to be dealt with right after you shoot it, or pretty darn quick, because the black powder residue is so corrosive. You don't want to ruin the finish. You certainly don't want to ruin the interior of your barrel, because you want to keep shooting straight, hopefully. So this is, I just had to tell you about it, because this is the best stuff that I have yet seen. Like I said, it just makes your cleaning just so much easier. It's just not the same thing at all. You actually kind of look forward to going out and shooting, because it's not going to take the rest of your day to clean up your gun.
To order RB17, you can get it. Call 1-800-721-7462. Again, 1-800-721-7462.
Now, friends, in shooting black powder, and we're just going to touch on this today, it is so important. We never load our gun from the can. One, we can't measure it accurately. But what we need to do is we need to load from a powder measure. Or now several companies are making the pre-measuring type little plastic capsule type things that you can carry with you, a pre-measured charge. But that is really important, because if you had any sort of spark left in your barrel and you started to pour some black powder out of your can, it could set the whole thing off. And then I hope you have good life insurance, because your family would be getting it. So there's just some things in black powder we just don't do. Now, friends, we have our powder measure loaded. We'll put it down the barrel. We're going to shoot a 90 grain load here, and be sure it's all in, and yes, it is. Now then, what I have is some prelude bullets. These happen to be buffalo bullets, which have been real good, real accurate for us. And of course, your bullet is going to be a slight bit larger than the bore, so we have what you call a ball starter. Like I said, we're going to be doing more black powder. We'll get it started down the bore, push it a little further. Now then, take our ramrod, and we'll firmly seat the bullet all the way down on the powder. Now, it's important shooting black powder. You can't have any space between that bullet and the powder. It's got to be packed all the way down. It's very important, because you darn sure don't want to blow anything up. Okay, and the last thing we do is most of you know who've been watching this program for several years, the last thing we do when the gun is pointed in a safe direction, then we'll have to cock it. Don't touch that trigger. And then we'll put our cap on it. And percussion caps are small, especially those of us with size large fingers. So go ahead and get it in place. And then after we get our percussion cap on and in place, again, keep the gun pointed in the safe direction. Then we'll put our thumb on that hammer and press the trigger and let the hammer down. Now, these guns have a half-cock type safety. The hammer cannot contact the nipple or the percussion cap as long as it's back. You have a block there with your trigger. This is another example of we never touch the trigger under any circumstance until we're ready to shoot the gun. If you don't touch the trigger, it won't go off. So I cannot overstress the importance of that. Anyway, now our gun is ready to shoot. And this is really such a neat package. Let's see what it does on our steel plate here. Whew. I tell you what, these things are potent. Yes, there's a reason they call them smoke poles. But we're going to come back and we're going to do some black powder coverage, like I said, maybe as early as next week, as soon as we can certainly get to it. And we're just going to see how these guns perform as to their old-timey counterparts. The Shootin' Show will be right back after these important messages.
The Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station.
You know, friends, this box of Corbin ammunition and this Wesson 41 Magnum are in fact a perfect match for each other. But it doesn't matter whatever gun you may have, like this SKS or a hunting rifle or a 38 Special or a 9mm, makes no difference, because Corbin is absolutely the best factory ammunition that money can buy, period. And also, friends, when you see a box of Corbin on the shelf or you give them a call, realize that Corbin is helping keep the shooting show on the air. They've been one of our most dedicated sponsors. You cannot find finer people in the entire shooting industry. For information on Corbin ammunition, call them 1-800-626-7266. Again, 1-800-626-7266. Tell them you saw it on the Shooting Show.
Friends, all of us as shooting enthusiasts should be subscribing to Shotgun News, the trading post for anything that shoots. 3 big issues monthly with literally thousands and thousands of firearms bargains. Shotgun News, Post Office Box 669, Hastings, Nebraska, the zip code 68902, their phone number, area 402-463-4589, MasterCard or Visa for subscriptions only. Now call them at 1-800-345-6923.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm standing here with 3 very fine people. I'm so happy to have made their acquaintance today. We're a very windy day here at the Louisiana State Capitol in Baton Rouge. And someone said earlier, I can't imagine who, that since we're surrounded by politicians, why should we be surprised at it being windy? But let me start here with the young lady here in the middle. This is Dr. Susanna Grazia, and she's from Killeen, Texas. And on her and my left here, we have Dennis. Tell me. Fusara is what he said. That's easy to remember once I finally get it down, Dennis. He's with Gun Owners of America, and over on our right here is a young man named Eric Donaldson, and Eric is with the NRA. And I think that we can all be proud of our efforts today. We won big for the state of Louisiana today with all our efforts, and certainly the shooting shows down here, photographing and lobbying and testifying on behalf of all gun owners. So since we have the young lady here in the middle, Susanna, tell us what, now we know of your connection, and people are going to see you later on in the program. You endured a terrible tragedy, that's all we can say, by losing your parents in that, by that horrible, crazy man in Luby's cafeteria. And we appreciate you coming so much. What was your feeling about today?
Well, hopefully what we did at least pushes them in the right direction. I'm not a terrific fan of any of these individual bills. I'm more of a fan of the concept of concealed carry. I'd much rather see all of the laws that have already been initiated repealed and go back to the basics.
Well, absolutely, and we appreciate your efforts so much. Well, Dennis, what was your feeling about our accomplishment today?
Well, I think we had a very strong statement in favor of the right to carry and the importance of law-abiding citizens being able to have a gun available for self-defense. And I think we've got a lot of momentum. We've got to keep it going, and we've got to make sure that the bills that do get passed are not loaded up with anti-gun provisions that make it too difficult for most gun owners to carry a gun for self-defense.
Well, of course, Dennis is here representing, and please bear with the wind. It's gotten ridiculous. Dennis is representing Gun Owners of America, and this is something with Eric has really made a huge effort today. And Eric, what was your feeling about the way the overall relations went between the committee and the things that we saw today?
We saw a lot of good bills today being discussed quite appropriately. A number of them were deferred for later action, and some were just outright defeated, and we're just happy to see that those pieces of legislation are sitting on the table with nobody interested in picking them up.
Absolutely. Well, of course, Eric is representing the National Rifle Association, and it goes to show that when we need to, I don't care what organization we're with, as long as we have a common goal, that we can get some things done, can't we?
You bet.
Right, and I really appreciate Eric's work, and I'd just like to shake his hand and thank you for your hard work, Eric.
Well,
We enjoyed it.
It's been a pleasure certainly meeting everyone here. Dennis, thank you.
Thank you, Johnny.
Susanna, thank you so much for coming down, and I know that people are really going to enjoy hearing, well, I don't know if they'll enjoy hearing your testimony, probably not, but it will touch and move people who hear it on our program. And it's so nice to meet you, and we wish you a lot of continued success and getting our message out.
Thank you very much. I just hope it does some good.
Well, I'm sure you will.
This is State Representative Roy Brunn here in Louisiana. He represents District 5, and he's going to give some of the reasons for the statewide concealed carry law that he is now working on. In fact, I would like to add that besides being a very fine and decent person, Roy is probably as strong an advocate of the right to keep and bear arms as any state legislator in any state anywhere. And here's what he has to say on some of these things.
There was a letter from the law enforcement officials in Florida which enacted a similar provision in 1987. And it's very interesting because, of course, at that time there were dire predictions of anarchy and crime in the streets, and everyone was going to be doing shoot-ups, you know, at noon on the main street. And what the law enforcement officials in Florida said is, number one, none of this has occurred. There have been very few problems. The murder rate in Florida was 36% above the national average. Since the passage, it's gone down below the national average. Now, I'm not here to tell you that there's a correlation, because I don't think that we have the data to say that with assurance. In my own mind, I think there's a correlation, but I can't tell you authoritatively that there is. But what I can tell you authoritatively is that the predictions of horrible consequences to follow did not materialize, and the statistics, if anything, show an improvement in the situation. I can also tell you about Caddo Parish. Our sheriff began issuing these permits shortly after I passed this legislature passed the law changing the parish concealed carry provision. It's my information that since that time, approximately 5,000 to 6,000 permits have been issued in Caddo Parish. Some of those obviously renewals, but there has not been a single problem. In fact, the chief of police from Shreveport stopped me about 18 months ago at a social function. He said, "Roy, I just wanted to tell you, when we passed that parish concealed carry, I thought that we were going to have all kinds of problems." And I told people that was a crazy law. He said, I said, I wanted to stop you and tell you that I had said those things and that I was wrong. It hasn't caused a problem. That's our experience where they have been issued widely.
More and more often, women are faced with protecting themselves and their homes. But another way of protection is through information. And we at the Shootin' Show believe that the new American magazine has the best information that you can possibly get.
You can get the New American by calling 1-800-727-TRUE. And those numbers, of course, are 1-800-727-8783. The New American, $22 for a 6-month subscription. It comes twice a month. Friends, you need this magazine if you want to know what's going on. And in times like this, we need both of these. We need our guns, and we darn sure need our information. Now, here's some testimony that I gave to the House Judiciary Committee with regard to some legislation. One of the bills had been introduced to take away anything semi-automatic, and here was my response to it.
I'm Johnny Rowland again, and I have the greatest respect for the well-intentioned people. I certainly have no qualms with intention. The problem is we're treating the symptom and not the disease. The problem is in society. As these gentlemen stated, there is no clear definition. There used to be a definition of assault weapon, and it was a selective fire weapon. And none of the public has been able to own selective fire weapons without an extensive federal license, which has been in effect many years. Semi-automatic technology has been around since about 1900 or somewhat before. And again, we have a problem in society. Something has to be done about society itself, not disarming the law-abiding citizen. We have a situation here where the government decides what weapon we're going to have. And technically, according to militia-type weapons, which is written into our Constitution, we should be able to own selective fire weapons for the militia person, the unorganized militia. We actually qualify for that. And I cannot see giving all power of having such a huge advantage of any governmental agency over what the citizen, because that's what this country is all about, is trust in the individual. And I think that's what it's going to come down to. So we're definitely opposed to any more legislation like that.
All right, thank you.
Well, friends, here we are this week. I hope you're enjoying our program. You'll notice the young man here on my right, he's back from traveling in the western U.S. of A. He got back safe, sound, and in good health. And we're so pleased you could be here with us today, sir.
And I didn't even come close to Oklahoma City.
There you go. Didn't even come close to it. Well, friends, one thing I want to mention, I don't know where we are in the program as far as where this is going to come as we speak, but I was testifying down at the House Judiciary Committee, and I mentioned the word militia. And you know, in the country today, militia is still not a bad word. Only the media has a problem with the word militia, the media and the Clintonians. The militia is written into the Constitution of the United States, and I think is one of the most important things that we have out here. And my testimony today dealt with, down in the House Committee, we had an individual, a representative, that wanted to take away all these semi-automatic guns, and I was trying to...
Oh, you didn't finish. That wasn't all. He wanted all handguns.
All handguns, yes.
And all semi-automatic rifles and shotguns.
Yes, that's correct. One other thing that he wanted, and friends, just to give you an idea of one of the things that was proposed, an individual had brought a bill that, in fact, we defeated one of his bills so badly that he chickened out. He wouldn't even introduce this one, but he wanted, if you wanted to buy a gun, he wanted you examined by a representative of the Senate, representative of the House, representative of the Department of Corrections, a psychiatrist, 2 sociologists, a psychologist, and who knows what else. And of course, all this was just to make buying a gun so difficult that none of us would have them. So we really, the point of us going down there was, friends, whatever state you're in, we have to find out when these bills are coming up, because that's the other side. The loonies are going to show up. Now, you can count on that. They're going to come. The reason that we're in the mess we're in is the decent people are so busy out here working and trying to earn a living and survive and pay their taxes and act right, that we sometimes don't take the time to go down and sit through some dull meetings and make our voices heard. And this is what's got to be done. Well, speaking of voices heard, I know you have some tremendous thoughts on the Oklahoma City incident, and I wish you'd go into that.
Well, Johnny, the standard technique in criminal investigation is to take a careful look at who profits from the action and then make them, if not the prime suspects, at least possible suspects, so as to go back and look and see what motive they had. Mm-hmm. I got a letter today from a man that has kept up with a lot of this stuff, and he really he put the nail on the head, really. He said, let us take a look at motive. Bill Clinton has privately, he says privately, actually it was publicly because I saw it on television, admitted that the NRA and the pro-gun crowd were responsible for the massive victory by Republicans in Congress. The Whitewater investigations are gaining ground. Surely that has got to have the president and her husband worried.
That was quick.
The Terry Reid's book, Compromised, speaks of Clinton, Bush, and the CIA, is a popular success. It's a major embarrassment to the Clinton crowd. Hearings were about to begin into the abuses of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the disaster at Waco was about to attract a full congressional investigation, as well as the Randy Weaver case. The evidence was overwhelmingly against the ban. The House hearings by the House Select Committee were fantastic. I've mentioned them before because I sat there and watched them and taped them. The radio and TV talk show hosts like Rush Limbaugh, G. Gordon Liddy, the Black Avenger from Denver, and others were proving to be major thorns in the sides of the administration. Clinton's popularity was on a downhill slide with as this man put it, with a rocket assist. Now all of a sudden we have a bombing in Oklahoma City that takes front page, deservedly front page, but unfocuses attention from all of these things that were embarrassing to Clinton, and then the question comes up, just who profited? Who profited? Did the militias profit? No, the militias haven't profited. The pro-gun crowd, have they profited?
Certainly not.
No, they haven't
Absolutely
profited.
not.
If you could blame such a tragedy on right-wing extremists, as the expression goes, then of course it would give the Clinton administration some definite support. And remember, Johnny, before the last election, I told you the thing that terrified me was the fact that we could see, I could see at least, that there were going to be massive Republican gains, and I was afraid that Clinton would find some excuse to declare martial law and thereby cancel the elections, and it still could happen a year and a half from now in the presidential election. And that, again, is what I'm worried about.
The Shootin' Show will be right back after these important messages.
The Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station. Friends, you can communicate with the Shootin' Show on CompuServe now. Our number is 735-42-3024. Again, 735-42-3024. And to join our Shootin' Show Gun Club, call us at 1-800-895-7916. We take Visa, MasterCard, check, money order, whatever you got. Join today, friends. We need to reach as many people as we can.
Hey, Shootin' Show fans, this is J.D. Jones. If you like to hunt, if you like handguns, you ought to be a member of Handgun Hunters International. It's a little organization I founded about 15 years ago. We print a little paper, have a lot of fun, go on hunts all over the country, sometimes all over the world. Costs you $23 a year. Send it to HHI, POB 357 MAG, Bloomingdale, Ohio 43910. Johnny will repeat it on the screen.
Now, friends, for this $23, you'll get a subscription to the Six Gunner, which is a very neat newspaper full of stories of hunting trips by people who actually went on the hunting trips. This is something, in fact, some of you might want to get your story published in the Six Gunner. Now, this comes from Handgun Hunters International, HHI, Post Office Box 357 MAG, Bloomingdale, Ohio. That zip code 43910. Again, the HHI, P.O. Box 357 MAG, Bloomingdale, Ohio 43910.
Why none of the law enforcement agencies are focusing on those things that normally they would focus on, that is, who profits from such an action and who definitely does not profit from it. It almost seems from what we read in the newspaper that the alleged culprits, notice I say alleged culprits, wanted to leave a trail that a blind man could follow.
I agree.
Certainly. And to say that McVeigh, I think that's his name, was one of the perpetrators of it, and he may have been, I don't know. He's innocent until he's proven guilty as far as I'm concerned. But how in the world did they manage to find somebody that could drive down an interstate highway and not remain inconspicuous? He drove down there, he sped, he didn't have a license plate.
It's outrageous.
And he was leaving a trail behind him that a rhinoceros could follow.
Well, I think you're right.
And I noticed in the Wall Street Journal on Monday, April 24th, I was up in Idaho, and incidentally for a very good reason. I was helping my daughter move. There's an article says some militiamen see a government plot in the Oklahoma blast. They think the feds orchestrated bombing in order to discredit some factions that the feds don't like. That kind of, that really is something that at least ought to be considered and looked at, and I haven't seen anybody looking at it yet.
Well, the federal government and the Clintonians, like you said, are the only people that really stand to profit out of this deal. And what in the world anything has to do, or bombing has to do with semi-automatic guns? That's ludicrous.
Well, I never have been a tremendous admirer of Bob Dole, but he said that on national TV. They were talking about how this ought to derail the business of semi-automatic firearms being unbanned, and he said he was unaware of any connection that semi-automatic firearms or assault weapons, legal or illegal, had to do with the matter in Oklahoma City, and I can certainly see that didn't have a thing to do with it. In fact, if the figures are right that it took 2,800 pounds of ammonium nitrate soaked in diesel oil to accomplish this bombing, that took some techniques, because as I understand it, it's not easy to cause ammonium nitrate to explode. Now, it gives a big bang when it does
Once you get it going, but
I've never tried it. I never have seen it tried, but the information I have is that it's very difficult to get it to explode. That's the reason why it's carried around in such loose quantities and large quantities.
Because it's not dangerous.
It's not dangerous except under certain very difficult conditions. It was a shipload of ammonium nitrate that exploded years ago down in Texas City.
Texas City, yes.
That wiped out a whole city.
Killed
I don't know.
1,000 people, didn't it?
Oh yes, killed numbers of thousands of people. Now, with all due respects to the people in Oklahoma City, and my sympathy goes to them because I think they are martyrs. In every sense of the word, they are martyrs for whoever is behind this. It is just unbelievable that this kind of thing could happen in this country. But remember, the same thing has been happening contemporaneously in Rwanda. It's been happening in Bosnia. It's been happening in
Cambodia.
In Cambodia. Oh my goodness, the killing fields there were millions of people. There weren't hundreds of people. There were millions of people. The capacity of evil is almost impossible to guess or to measure. And to kill children, and that's a horrible thing. But it's happening in Bosnia. It's happening in Rwanda. We're being cut up with hatchets. With
horrible. People will. It's horrible what people will do to each other if given the opportunity.
Yes, it is. And in the large picture, I am not satisfied individually with the direction of the investigation unless there are factors in the investigation and directions in the investigation that I am not aware of. And that, of course, is highly possible. I notice, however, that this particular person who wrote to me rather amused me. He said that we were talking about the FBI investigation. He said that it's hard to believe that anybody smart enough to put together a bomb of the size used in Oklahoma City would be dumb enough to drive down a main highway in broad daylight without a license plate and speeding. He finds it hard to believe that the same man wouldn't take his gun off and hide it.
Well, he wasn't. As we understand it, he was not arrested on account of having a gun because that was legal to carry openly in Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma, I believe. But I understand that he was actually arrested. He had a concealed knife. You know, it's just too, this is wild stuff.
Well, this man that wrote to me said, I don't know about others, but I see a lot of similarities between McVeigh and Lee Harvey Oswald. He sees McVeigh as either a decoy or a patsy, or maybe even a plant. He was planning to draw heat from the real culprits and direct it toward militia groups who are politically active, but have nothing at all to gain. As a matter of fact, they had everything to lose.
That's
because
right.
in the November elections, the conservative groups, the pro-gun groups, won. They had nothing to gain by doing something like this that would upset the apple cart,
Right.
and cause a lot of backlash on it.
Well, I think you're exactly right. And the good news is there are still questions being asked. I think there are going to be hearings on the Waco fiasco. I think that this.
Oh, they are going to be held.
And hopefully on Ruby Ridge, and that was in Idaho, wasn't it? Randy, we was in Idaho, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Speaking of, let me interrupt for a second here. You know, speaking of the citizen being armed and the rights to be armed, I heard one of the greatest testimonies that I have ever heard from anyone. This was Dr. Susanna Grazia from Killeen, Texas. And we were able to get her entire testimony at the hearings the other day. And why don't we play that now? Let's get.
Well, I think it'd be a good thing to play because it certainly is a dramatic a bit of testimony and illustrates so well the fact that people being armed causes no danger to the honest people, law-abiding people. The citizen who has a concealed carry permit is no threat to the community. It's the criminals that are a threat to the community.
Absolutely. So here's Dr. Grazia.
A lot of witnesses here to testify. I'd like to introduce two of them to you. On my right is Dr. Susanna Grazia from Texas. I'm not going to summarize her testimony. I want her to tell you about her own experience. I think you'll find it compelling. And to my left, Mr. Eric Donaldson with the National Rifle Association. And then I believe there are others who may want to testify in favor.
I'm from Texas, but I kind of feel like I've come home. My father was born and raised down close to New Orleans, and I spent a lot of time here. I didn't grow up in a house with guns, and I'm personally not into hunting. But I was given a gun by a friend of mine when I was 21 and had moved out on my own for the purpose of self-protection. In fact, one of my patients was an assistant DA, and he told me I was nuts if I didn't carry one. A few years ago, my parents and I were at a cafeteria in Texas. It was a bright, sunny day. We were not in a dark alley where we weren't supposed to be. It was a crowded restaurant, middle of the day. We had finished eating, and all of a sudden, some guy drives his truck through the window. Well, I started to raise up to go help because he knocked over a number of people on the way in. But as soon as I began to raise up, we heard gunshots. Well, immediately, my father and I got down and put the table up in front of us, and my mother was down behind us. And I can remember thinking, it's a robbery. But the shooting continued. And then I can remember thinking, is it a hit? It was boss's day, and I remember, you think, is there somebody important in here? And the shooting continued. It took a good 45 seconds to realize that this guy was simply going to walk around and shoot as many people as he possibly could. That is not the first thing that comes to your mind. He was not spraying bullets. He had complete control of the situation. He simply walked from one person to the next, pointed, pulled the trigger, went to the next one, pointed, pulled the trigger. Well, when I did figure out what was going on, I thought, I got this turkey. I reached for my purse, realized now I had, everybody in the restaurant was down except for him. He was maybe 15 feet from me, and I've hit much smaller targets at much greater distances. I had a table up in front of me, I had a place to prop my arm, everything was perfect. Except then I realized that a few months earlier I had made the stupidest decision of my life. My gun was 100 yards away in my car, because in the state of Texas, it is a felony offense under certain circumstances to carry concealed. In the state of Texas, we don't have any way of carrying concealed at all, legally. At that point, my father began to raise up and he said, I got to do something, I got to do something. He's going to kill everybody in here. And when he thought there was a chance, he went at the guy. But like I said, the guy had complete control. You couldn't rush him. The man turned and shot my father in the chest. He went down in the aisle, and as horrible as this sounds, I basically wrote him off at that point. He was alive and semi-conscious, but I saw the wound, and I put that out of my mind at that point. But that did make the gunman change directions, thank God for me, and he went off to my left. At that point, somebody at the back of the restaurant broke out a window. When I heard the window break, I can remember thinking, oh God, here comes another one. You know, you're still wondering if it's a terrorist attack or what. But then I saw people getting out through that back window. So when I saw what I thought was a chance, I got up, I grabbed my mother, and I said, come on, we gotta run, we gotta get out of here. And then my feet grew wings, and I was out the back window. Once I got out the back window, I realized that my mother hadn't followed me out. And I found out from the police officers, who, by the way, were in the building next door, that she was the last person that the gunman killed. She had opted to stay with my father. She had crawled out into the open and was cradling him until the gunman got back around to her. She looked up at him, put her head down, he pulled the trigger. My parents had been married for 47 years, and she wasn't going anywhere. 23 people were killed that day. It was a slaughterhouse. It was like, I can't even begin to get across to you what it's like to sit there and simply wait for a guy to get to you next. I can't even get that across to you, how incredibly frustrating that is. I want to make one thing real clear, and this may sound a little odd to you. I'm not mad at the guy that did it. We're not talking about a career criminal. We're talking about somebody who went nuts. I am mad as heck at my own legislators because they legislated me out of the right to protect myself and my family. And I have said that from day one. The media picked it up. I haven't changed the story since. I can tell you that I would much rather be sitting in jail with a felony offense on my head and have my parents alive. And it's not going to happen to me again. I thank you for your time.
Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station. Well, Judge, that was really powerful, wasn't it, what she had to say?
I think it was just so powerful it's hard to comment about it.
Well, I would certainly agree. And, of course, she stood up really well. There were one or two people on that committee that that were really out to lunch, if you ask me. Most of the committee members were very, very decent people. But one or two were just wondering where they got their intellect, whatever they have. And one of those people asked Dr. Grazia, said, well, in Oklahoma City, every armed citizen in Oklahoma wouldn't have been able to stop that bombing. And my thought was, what did that have to do with anything? And, there are always going to be things that happen, but when you have a situation like this, when the honest citizen can be armed, they can stop something.
Well, I remember that Jack Kennedy said that if a man was willing to sacrifice his own life, he could kill a president without any problem.
Yeah, or do about anything, cause any kind of destruction if someone's willing to sacrifice their own life. So anyway, well, where do we go from here as far as on your feelings on this bombing, or what, where do we go from here?
Well, I don't know where we go. Because I'm not running the bombing. I mean, I'm not running the investigation. Hopefully, the members of Congress will not be so stampeded that they will enact laws that they will later regret. As far as infiltrating some of these organizations, yes. But I wrote a letter to our senators, our congressmen, and to some committee chairmen that asked him to please be very, very careful that the administration was not given the unbridled power to declare any organization it wanted, with or without evidence, to be a danger, and thereby gain control of their membership list, gain control of their books, gain control of their finances, gain control of their fundraising activities. This is exceedingly perilous in a representative democracy. And
remember who got the powers of the FBI and some of these other agencies cut back. If you remember, let's go back in the 70s. It was under the Carter administration. The ultra-left liberals thought that there was too much surveillance, so they're the ones who got them cut back in the first place.
Well, I think they were proper in getting some of those powers cut back.
Sure.
Now, I find myself strangely allied with the American Civil Liberties Union
on this particular issue.
On this particular issue, because they are outspoken on the dangers that come from giving government agencies excessive quantities of power, investigative or otherwise. I'm aware of the fact, of course, the United States Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision, which wasn't big enough to suit me, declared that the federal Gun-Free School Zones Act of 1990 was unconstitutional. It was not an exercise of the power to regulate interstate commerce. It wasn't interstate, and it wasn't commerce. This is not to say that some of us do not agree that schools are a poor place to have a lot of firearms, but the states have already done this.
Have taken care
Over
of
40 states have already passed laws on that, and one of the ones that hadn't passed it is, I understand, is Vermont. Vermont doesn't have any gun laws, and they have the lowest crime rate in the nation.
Well, this is the thing. I don't know of any school anywhere that would allow firearms in the school anyway. Have you ever heard that? There's no school principal that's going to let the children bring guns to school anyway.
If they can stop it.
If they can stop it. And again, what does the criminal or even some of these juvenile delinquents, what do they care about what the law says? Nothing at all.
Well, by very definition, Johnny, the criminals don't obey the law.
That's right. By definition. So who are being regulated but the honest citizens?
That's all, because in fact, Johnny, there's even been one Supreme Court decision that said that you cannot require a known criminal to register his firearm, because that would be admitting that he was guilty in violation of the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. And let me tell you, the amendments to the Constitution are very valid for the maintenance of a free society. The liberal Supreme Court, or courts, that gave additional language and verbiage and interpretation to those provisions were not wrong. They were right. Remember that in our society, it's always been considered to be best to let a few guilty people go free on whatever you may call it, technicalities or what have you, go free, than it is to have innocent people incarcerated in jail or subjected to the indignities of a hostile government.
We don't want a police state. We absolutely do not want a police state. And these one world types, new world order types, that's what they want, is a police state. We don't want a police state. We still believe in the individual. You know, there are a percentage of nuts in society, but the percentage of decent people so far overrides the percentage of nuts that the decent people will win in the end. They will.
Well, that's true, Johnny. And again, I go back to some of Sarah Brady's own words. and she's been outspoken on connection with this, saying that this ought to stop the efforts to repeal the Brady Law, stop the efforts to repeal the gun ban. And I go back to her own language when she was talking to Senator Metzenbaum, saying that we will never be able to achieve our dream of a socialist America until we totally disarm all of those who would never consent. That's an important quotation. She slipped up when she admitted that.
Yep. You know, friends, it's rare in any field of manufacture that one particular company has a clear-cut advantage over the others. Well, in this case, it's Corbin Ammunition, Corbin Bullet Company, because they make the best handgun, long gun, and even some specialty caliber ammunition that's been real hard to get in the past. If you really want your handgun or rifle to perform at their absolute best, you need to find some Corbin ammunition. For information on where you can get Corbin, information on their product line, call them. Corbin Bullet Company, 1-800-626-7266. Again, give them a call. It's a free call, 1-800-626-7266. Trust me on this one. Corbin is the best there is.
Soldier of Fortune has served as watchdog and rallying point for more than 100,000 concerned Americans every month for 20 years. During that time, Soldier of Fortune magazine has always stood fast at the front lines in the battle against oppression at home and abroad, keeping our readers up to date on firearms legislation, the assault weapons ban, the Ranger ambush in Somalia, the Brady Bill, and even more restrictive Brady 2. And we show you how you can fight back. Soldier of Fortune was among the first to expose handgun control's true agenda, the eventual elimination of all guns in America. And we were there at Waco, digging up the real story behind the raid and the perverted political games that resulted in the death of nearly 80 men, women, and children. We were one of the only national magazines to cover the Randy Weaver standoff in Idaho, and the list goes on. And our coverage doesn't stop in the U.S. We also get into places overseas that the mainstream pretty boys wouldn't be caught dead in. So if you believe there's more to a story than what you see on TV, if you like your news hard-hitting and in-depth, if you want to read articles by people who have been there and have credentials to back up their opinions, you're probably one of us. Look for us the next time you're at a newsstand, or subscribe by calling 1-800-877-5207. For only $25.95, you receive 12 issues, a full year's worth of unforgettable, important news from reporters who saw it happen. Call 1-800-877-5207. Visa, MasterCard accepted.
Friends, to advertise on the Shootin' Show, you can call Bobby Christie or Al Evans at 1-800-SAVE-YOU-GUN. That's 1-800-728-8486. Remember, we need every sponsor, every advertiser we can get, because we have to get out to the public with our message about gun rights and gun ownership. Again, 1-800-728-8486. Well, friends, it's happened again. We've run out of time for today's program. From Kurt, the judge, myself, we want to thank everyone for being with us for today's program, and we look forward to seeing you on the next Shootin' Show.